Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we are with Alesha, who smiles at death, a Mardu Reanimator deck. This deck is one of our 2 donation decks of the week, and it comes from Jucario, who says, "This deck was made for a budget commander event at my LGS, and I quickly became fond of Alesha's graveyard shenanigans. It did alright in the event, but given the budget of $60 at the time, it pales in comparison to my other decks. I'd like to try to get it around a 6 or a 7, but I've been struggling with what to put in it, what to cut, and how to reliably close out games. I wouldn't mind leaning more into aristocrats with this, but I'd like to see what you do with it." And in terms of restrictions, they said, "I'm willing to put around $150 to $200 or so into the deck. Dockside Extortionist and Orcish Bowmasters probably belong in this deck, but they are frowned upon in my play group, so I can't include those." We can definitely work with that kind of budget, and we can definitely work with that kind of restriction. And funnily enough, I'm getting pretty close to putting back together my Alesha deck, who existed for a very, very brief amount of time. I like playing with her, but I was just in this mode where I was moving around the Mardu deck a lot, so I'm kind of down to play it again, so the timing of this is impeccable. And I'm really excited to see what we can do with this deck. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. So who is Alesha, who smiles at death, and why are they the leader of our Reanimator deck? Alesha, who smiles at death, is a 3 mana in red legendary human warrior, 3/2 first strike. Now they're red, but because of the hybrid mana of black and white within their second ability, they are a Mardu commander. And that ability says, whenever Alesha, who smiles at death, attacks, you may pay a white-black hybrid and a white-black hybrid. So any combination of white-white, black-black, or white and a black. If you do, return target creature card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Now, this is a very specific kind of Reanimator, because traditionally when we think about Reanimator, we're trying to grab any big creature or specific big creatures that are just very large and like end games immediately. Or we're looking to grab a number of creatures and reanimate them all at once. Alesha doesn't really do either of that. Her power is very, very specific on what it can hit, so we're looking for very specific cards and strategies to build upon. And it only reanimates 1 creature at a time, and it reanimates them tapped and attacking. So there's a lot to kind of consider in this kind of build, but there's also a lot to like. With that, let's take a look at the cards in the deck primarily and see what works and what doesn't. So at the start, I do really like this deck. I think it's gone into a very good direction, though I have a few notes I will be getting into right away. Looking at the curve, I'm generally very happy with it. We're very high in 2 mana, but that kind of makes sense. We have lowish on 3 mana, which is nice because of our commander, and then we kind of trickle down, which once again kind of makes sense with a Reanimator commander deck, right? There's a lot of cards in the higher amounts that like higher mana that we're not actually going to cast, and we're going to try to reanimate instead. So looking at this deck, what are my first kind of thoughts? Well, clearly the main way this deck works is we're using a lot of looting effects to throw cards from our hand into our graveyard, hope to reanimate them, and kind of just build this engine of advantage to defeat our opponents. Now there's parts of that I do like, but I think we might be too far into that strategy. I think we might be playing too many cards that are just kind of value cards as opposed to ones that really win us the game. I'll show a few for example. Let's see. So for example, Morbid Opportunist feels like a pretty good card. Whenever 1 or more creatures die, draw a card. This is once a turn and like works well with aristocrat strategies, but is the same mana cost of our commander and doesn't really do much until we're off the floor, right? This is kind of a win more card in this deck. It's not just drawing us an exponential amount of cards, it's drawing us 1 per turn as long as we have the means to constantly be killing off creatures or generating creatures and then sacrificing them. Like, this is a lot of balls in the air just to get this effect, and it feels a little bit more. Likewise, I do feel like there's a lot of protection style cards. Legendary humans you control have indestructible. Over here, Jarina, we can sacrifice her to give our commander indestructible. Let's see. Company commander's second ability also gives death touch, which obviously works well with our commander, but is not reliable. Iroas also gives prevents all combat damage. You're getting the kind of vibe. There's a lot of cards here to protect our commander, and I feel like we might be leaning too far into that. One of the perks of the aristocrat strategy, especially in these colors, is the fact that we have such redundancy, and it's so easy to keep going on that strategy with low mana. We don't really need, to overdo protecting our commander. We can just get a few reanimations in and let her die and just move on. Or we can recast her and move on that way. So I feel like we put too many cards into that plan. Then there's a few other cards that I find just are a little too set up-ish. Charming Scoundrel is one of them, though a very interesting card. And I'm going to come back to this ETB ability, is generally kind of not that great. Because usually we're just going to get one effect out of it. It's not going to be ideal. Likewise, this Triarch Praetorian is really, really cool when it works with your commander, but otherwise is a pretty lackluster creature. We're really just playing a 2/1 flyer for 2 if we can't unearth it or reanimate it. And if we unearth the Praetorian, I mean, we paid 5 mana to draw 2 cards and then attack with a 2/1. It's really not the card we want in our deck. I'm going to come back to the Aristocrats deck cards themselves, but let's see, I should be clicking these when I get to them. Another one that really kind of comes to mind is Keurig. Keurig is a really, really strong card, but this isn't the kind of deck that uses it. Keurig is just really strong when we have a ton of black mana symbols, and we have a little less than you would expect, and we have only a few single black cards. So what we're doing really is reducing the mana cost of about half of our creatures. And I don't know, I don't think it does enough here. Also, the ability to be growing this creature consistently is something that's just kind of tricky to do when we're not casting the majority of our cards. And when Kirk comes into play attacking, he's very likely to be blocked and destroyed, preventing us from getting one of the effects. Obviously, Reconnaissance changes that, but it's still worth considering. All right, before we go into non-creatures, I want to go back and talk a little bit about certain combos, namely the aristocrat combos. So we have a few aristocrats here, right? We have Cruel Celebrant, Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat. Down here we have, I thought we had one more. Was I mistaken in that? Yeah, we do. We have Falcon Wrath Noble. Now, I believe if we wanted, we would rather Vindictive Vampire here, which I think hits all opponents as opposed to one. So that would be an easy change, but I'm actually going to suggest we don't need to be this far into this kind of strategy. I think I would cut 2 of them, and I think I would cut the Noble, and I would probably cut the Blood Artist, because they're the weakest ones because they only hit one opponent at a time. Cool Celebrant is one of the strongest ones because we are in the colors with access to her, so that one's very, very strong. And then obviously Zulaport Cutthroat also is like second strongest. And I missed Elis Ilkor. Obviously Elis Ilkor is, I think, actually stronger than Cruel Celebrant, yes. Creature you control, creature you control. Okay, so I would probably keep those 3, Cruel Celebrant, Elis Ilkor, and Zulaport Cutthroat. And I'll get to why in a second. Last time I said this, I had a commenter say that Blood Artist, I was forgetting that Blood Artist target, it triggers off of any death and not just your creatures dying, and therefore is worth considering. I will note to that, I will answer that in the fact that when we play Aristocrat, it's our creatures that are doing triggers the most, like dramatically more than our opponents. So though Blood Artist will trigger off our opponent's creatures dying, you have to think in the sense, in order to the same damage of Zulaport Cutthroat, for every one of our creatures dying, Blood Artist needs to see 3 of your opponent's creatures dying to do the same damage. And I think, though it will gain you more life, it also, like, it's much, it's unlikely, right? I don't like these cards. Like, I love Blood Artist, and I'll still play it in a dedicated Aristocrats deck, but here I think we can lean back off of it a little bit and let Zulaport, for example, do the work. And coming into why I want to lean back off of these a bit is our main methods of triggering Aristocrats is tokens, which will come back into my additions, but the Karmic Guide and Revelark combo. For those who don't know, Karmic Guide reanimates Revelark. You sacrifice both of them. Revelark leaves play and reanimates the Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide reanimates the Revelark, so on and so forth. So when you have a sack outlet and a Blood Artist effect, this is a combo that will defeat all your opponents at instant speed. So with that in mind, you don't need multiple, like if this is one of the ways we win, we don't really need that many Blood Artist effects. We need like a few to draw into them naturally if we are not using tutors. And I'm going to suggest that this is actually more than enough because we just need that first one for the combo to win. And even then with our other cards, I think we're generally happy by having one at max or one or two aristocrat effects, and we're still going to bring in a lot of advantage. I will replace these cards or suggest replacements that still get the damage through, but I think we could be doing a little better. Burnished Heart is one also that I'm kind of sketchy on. So I always talk about how, where's our 4-mana sad robot? Solemn Simulacrum belongs in decks that can take advantage of recursion with it, and this is exactly that kind of deck. So I actually do like Solemn Simulacrum here, but Burnished Heart I don't like as much, namely because of that activated ability cost, and if we reanimate the Burnished Heart without having that mana up, most likely it will be blocked and then killed, and we won't get that effect. So with that in mind, I think this is too much of an opportunity cost to play this card. It's 6 mana or 5 mana with our commander. It needs setup, and our deck is built in a way we don't need that much mana. Once we hit about 5 or 6, I want to keep it that way, we kind of don't need to keep like generating mana. So to me, something like the Burnished Heart feels like a bit of a hole to sink mana in that we don't need to sink mana in that way. All right, let's look at some sorceries. I like our sorceries quite a bit. Witch's Mark seems close. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. The curse roll is nice, but it's probably the weakest one. At least the other ones do a little better, so it's not bad, but I'm just a little suspicious of it. Buried Alive is great. Citywide Bust is fine. I think I would just rather the board clear, because this still hits some of our creatures that I don't particularly love that it hits some of our creatures. With that in mind, I'd rather just have the board clear. And we could pick one of those board clears that destroys all but one creature or something like that and keep our commander. Maybe this is good. I'm very suspicious of it, but I could see this not being the worst thing. But with that in mind, Austere Command definitely should go. This is just overkill. We do not need this much of a board clear. I think I'd rather this just be Wrath of God or Damnation, or actually we can just play Damn. Let me just bring that up now. We can just play Damn. We're in the colors, so this would be the best version of that card, as it is a board clear and targeted removal. So that would be my answer to this card. And Dusk to Dawn is really, really good, so that works very well. But Austere Command, too much mana, I don't particularly like it. Looking at our instants, they're pretty good. I feel like Nasty End is a bit overkill. I don't think we need that effect that badly. And I'd rather it be Carrion Feeder as our second kind of card that, our second kind of card that sacrifices our creatures at instant speed. Carrion Feeder is just stronger, works better with our Revelark combo, will be much, much happier. Through Possibility is fine. I'm not too impressed by it, but it's fine. And Mortify is also fine. I'm going to suggest probably Stroke of Midnight is just better, but this is okay. Looking at our artifacts, I'm also a big fan. Skull Clamp's very good, Soul Ring's very good. Obviously, a lot of these work very, very well. But I will note, we don't have Ashnod's Altar, which is something that can be played here. And I'm not sure to what degree I want to play all of these signets. I think, first of all, I'd rather them be the talismans, because the talismans do not need an additional mana to tap, and I always appreciate that. And these signets tend to be better when we're playing a deck that needs the mana, but with a 3-mana commander, the signets don't really do much for us. All they do is let us hold up a additional mana at the end of the turn when we summon our commander on that third turn. And I can't see us really taking advantage of that. So with that in mind, I feel like they're overkill. I think you could turn them into talismans, or honestly, if you ask me, you could probably just cut them, leave the arcane signet, maybe grab Felwar Stone, and that's probably enough. Or what you could do is keep the Talisman of Indulgence, which is the red-black one, and Talisman of... cannot remember it, but the white-red one. Because remember, we need that initial red for our commander, and then we can use the other color that the mana rock provides for the ability. So I would like that myself. I don't think we need that much mana rocks. Commander Sphere is definitely overkill. We don't need that. We can do better in draw, and we don't need that ramp. Whisper Silk Cloak is fine. I think... I don't love this card. I always find it's overcosted, but once you have it on your commander, it is very, very strong. As I said before, I feel like we have so many protection abilities. Do we really need one more? And I would probably argue as a 5-mana card, like 3 to play, 2 to equip, we don't. I think this one can be easily cut. Looking at our lands, our enchantments, Reconnaissance is very good, Agent of the Shadow Thieves is very good, Bitter Reunion is once again fine, and Cathar's Crusade, in this build, I don't love it, but with some additions, I'm going to like it a bit more, so I think that's fine. Finally, coming to our lands, I would like to add us, go up to 38, and I think by taking out the signets, I think that'll be enough. We have enough draw and discard draw that I think will be fine. I would honestly say if you do have the budget, because a lot of the cards I'm going to suggest are cheap. That's just generally how I do it. I don't like suggesting very expensive cards or a huge amount of expensive cards. You can spend that money on fetches and shocks. That would be probably the best way to use that money. Because I'm not going to suggest anything too expensive. I think we'll see. I did put a few expensive cards, but not too many. And fetches and shocks will just improve this mana base, and like the triome in our color, you'll be very, very happy with that. I think that'll be more than enough. All right, let's go into additions. There's Dam we talked about. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the aristocrat strategy. The what do we call it? That enchantment, Cathar's Crusade, going wide, reanimation, and tokens. With Alesha, we don't really have targets that just end the game. We don't have the equivalent. I know these are banned in the format, but like Grizzlebrand, Emrakul, Atraxa. Atraxa's not banned, but not in our colors. Those are the things I like reanimating in like Modern, right? These are the things that end the game. I play an Atraxa Blink deck, and like you summon Atraxa once, and you are winning the game. That's just the end, kind of the end. It's just huge card advantage. However, we don't have those kind of options at 2 power or less. So what I like doing is I like giving us options that allow us to go exceedingly wide with tokens very, very quickly. And then we can start taking advantage of these kind of strategies. So let's start with Newscraft Mob. Newscraft Mob is honestly, I think, my favorite one. I really, really like it. It comes in, gets 5 counters, and then whenever a player casts a spell, you turn a counter into a 2/2 zombie creature, and then when it runs out, it dies, which is usually by the time you can attack again and reanimate the Newscraft Mob once again. This is just a fantastic card. It just generates so many bodies so quickly. I think it's probably the strongest version of these subsequent cards, but I will note it doesn't instantaneously create the tokens, and that is something worth considering. Oh, this should be further down. It is tokens, but oops. I don't know what these buttons do. Let's move you a little bit forward. Oh, I didn't even move the right one. There you go. Nobody knows about this. Is it still in the wrong place? It's still in the wrong place. All right. All for nothing. So Chittering Witch and to a certain extent Siege Gang Commander are more standard kind of cards of creating an army in a can. Siege Gang creates 3 1/1 red goblins, and then you could sacrifice a goblin to deal 2 damage to any target. Chittering Witch creates 3 rat tokens, and you can sacrifice a creature to give -2/-2 to a creature. Now, I like the witch a little more because she comes in at 4 mana, and her sacrifices any creature, so I'm a little more fond of her. But you can probably play both without much problem. They create the same amount of bodies. You're fine if they die, because when they die, you just reanimate them again, do it again, and move on. Now, coming back here briefly, I will note that you are playing, where are they? The white-black one, Company Commander, that I mentioned earlier. But I will say, this card is a little weaker than those. And my reasoning is this. First of all, it's multicolored, so it's harder to cast. That's not that big of a deal, but I wanted to say it. But the main thing is the Bring It Down ability. So this triggers on attack, and when you reanimate Company Commander, it hasn't attacked, so you don't get that trigger. You also don't get the, if you had mana open, the other 2 offer you that activated ability that you can sacrifice itself, destroy its blocker, anything like that at instant speed, whereas Company Commander is just running in as a 2/4, hoping things work out, right? This is fine as the final copy of this ability, but I don't like it as the first copy of this ability. So let's go back. And here we can take a moment and talk about the next card, Ruthless Technomancer. I really like Ruthless Technomancer. This is a card I am very much so always fond of, and what it does is it ETBs, sacrifices a creature, and makes treasure tokens. Here's the thing though, it sacrifices a creature, and then it gives you treasure tokens equal to its power. As you note, this deck generally has lower power things. This is why I do like Cathar's Crusade. I like the Angel in there that boosts them. Alesha Reanimator could be in here, though I haven't suggested her. If you could make it, or Newscraft Mob even comes in as a 5/5, right? If you can make it so your creatures grow, Ruthless Technomancer becomes much, much stronger. And even if you don't, I think this is fine. You play this, you pay 2 mana to play this, you sacrifice a creature, you go up 2 tokens, you're kind of neutral, and then Ruthless Technomancer can do the same thing, like it can reanimate creatures in the same way. Like, you pay 2 and a black, you sacrifice the 2 treasure tokens that you have, and then you reanimate a creature with power 2 or less, which is the whole point of the deck. So this is really nice. It's not just like creating treasure, but also being an alternative way to use Alesha's power. So I really like this here. I do note you might not get as many treasures as other decks, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's a lot of utility in this creature. Another token generator that I think really, really belongs here and is a part of a combo we're going to see. So let's do the combo first. It's Felidar, Guardian, and Kiki-Jiki. If you have both of these in play, you can make an infinite amount of Felidar Guardians, and when you do, you attack. They all have haste, you attack all your opponents, and you win the game. There's other ways you can win the game, obviously. If you can sacrifice them with a Blood Artist, or when you have Corpse, is it Corpse Connoisseur? Corpse Knight is what it is, I believe. Corpse Knight will also trigger damage every time we do this, so those are pretty nice. There's a lot of ways we can win with that strategy. However, Kiki-Jiki also is just really, really good by themselves, and if you're going to be like, well, I don't want to play the Felidar Guardian combo, that's fine. You can just play Kiki-Jiki. Obviously, there is a problem that you have to reanimate Kiki-Jiki attacking, which is very much so not ideal. But if you can get that attack through, or you can use Reconnaissance or something like that to untap that creature, you now have an incredibly, incredibly powerful utility creature on your side. As I've noted before, a lot of the cards in your deck function very well as, how do we put this, as ETB creatures, and Kiki-Jiki just lets you get away with a lot of fun with them, where you can reanimate your token producers, all of a sudden getting a bunch of tokens. You can reanimate some creatures to die, because at end of turn, they're going to be sacrificed, you get some drains, or you can just do things like, you know, hit Gonti, hit Solemn Simulacrum, you know, these kind of things, and gain a lot of advantage. And I think that's really, really strong. It is 5 mana. He is kind of hard to play fairly, but if you can get him out, you're just in a very, very good position. All right, so here are the 2 expensive cards. We're getting into enchantments now. These are the main 2 expensive cards I'd like you to play, and one of them is Necropotence, and the other one is Smothering Tithe. Now, Necropotence is some card draw. I'm going to give you some more card draw later, but this is a particularly strong bit of card draw. This is probably the strongest card draw in the game, if you ask me, but probably, well, by itself, maybe I'll say. But Necropotence is just fantastic. You just draw your entire deck into your hand, and you get to do what you want. But, and this is a very important but, is that this clause right here. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. This is not an ability that only applies to the discarding at the end of your discard phase or your cleanup step. This is whenever you use any Thrill of Possibility effects. Now you might say, Cursed, then why are you suggesting this card? Like, a lot of this deck does not work with this card. You know, all of a sudden all of our Tormented Voices and all of these things don't work anymore. And I'm going to say, I still would want to play this card. This card is so strong, especially in a deck like this, especially in a deck where you just need to hit 5 mana to start casting your big creatures, and you have many other ways to reanimate your creatures, which I think I will say Unmarked Grave is one that I'm missing, and we'll come back to that. Ooh, not what I wanted. There we go. So we are losing a lot of cards in our deck, but like their utility, but at the same point, at that point in the game, I don't think you care. If you're able to resolve Necropotence, you're ahead on mana, and you're just going to spend 20 life and draw 20 cards, I don't think you mind if you exile them. You're in a commanding position, hopefully you've got a bunch of tokens, a bunch of defense, and then ideally on your next turn, you'll just set up the win from the cards in your hand of whatever you need to do. And especially if you have things like sacrifice effects on the battlefield, where you can just hard cast the creatures, sacrifice them, reanimate them ad nauseum. And obviously this works very well with Great Merchant. Very happy with this card, I will say. And then Smothering Tide, everyone knows Smothering Tide. If you have the budget for this, you're in white, you should be playing this card. This card is so strong. Your opponents immediately have to deal with it, or the game is just gonna get away from them and into your hands, and you're gonna have tons and tons of mana. Going back to Unmarked Grave, I did forget to say this earlier, but just another Entomb effect. So you have Entomb, Unmarked Grave, and Buried Alive is a nice collection of tutors to immediately do what you want to do. You don't have that many legendary targets, so you're pretty happy. This card will get the right creature into your graveyard for you to reanimate. Alright, something else I would like you to be playing is Impact Tremors. This is especially with the token cards that I've been telling you to play, but even then, like obviously the Revelar combo works really well with this. A lot of different combos that you can pull off. Your deck has access to a lot of combos, and I just want to kind of add to that. Impact Tremors is just another place. You take out Blood Artist, you put this in. There's just another place to start defeating your opponents, and like the value of using this with like, you know, Newscraft Mob or the Chittering Witch is just you're going to be dealing so much damage with a very little opportunity cost from you. You know, it's just rewarding you for playing the deck as intended, so you're going to be pretty happy with the results. So I think this is a really easy addition. Animate Dead is just notably missing from our enchantments. I just feel like another reanimation spell is just really nice. Outside of a commander, you know, we want and Victimize, I think, are the two main ones in your deck. I just think we want another card to just reanimate creatures, and we're going to be pretty happy with that. Another one is Dread Return. Same idea. This is just a really good reanimation spell. It works really well with tokens because you just sacrifice the tokens to get a creature back when this is in your graveyard. And when it's not in your graveyard, you just cast it for 4 mana, and you're very happy. So this is an easy addition. And okay. Now we're coming to the last few cards. These are just our generic good cards in our colors that I think we should be playing, namely card draw. I feel like you're missing a lot of card draw. As I said with Necropotence, here are the cards that I want you to play, but it is important to note that, like, you know, things like Tormenting Voice, these rummage effects or these looting effects aren't necessarily card draw, right? They're actually kind of card disadvantage sometimes, not the 2-mana ones, but like Faithless Looting is, where we play a card, we draw 2, we discard 2, we're actually down a card because we never replace the one in our hand. Now, Tormented Voice and the 2-mana ones do replace themselves, but we're never going up on cards, and we do want to do that. And Obviously, those cards are just really, really bad when we are top decking. We're Hellbent and we draw Tormenting Voice. We're just deeply unhappy. So Night's Whisper is the easiest one as always. Just draw 2, lose 2. It's like divination for 2 mana. We're pretty happy. Read the Bones is always my favorite. I think is just a very clean card in most medium to high powered commanders. Scry 2, draw 2, lose 2, you dig 4, you're very happy. But once again, the card that's very quickly replacing this card in my heart is Rowan's Grim Search. And if you can pay for the bargain, it is the superior card. And I will say, you can pay for the bargain, right? This is a card where you can definitely pay for the bargain, as we have a bunch of tokens. And of course, this card becomes so strong with the bargain because you are milling those cards into your graveyard. This one's very specific where you can only put 2 back on top. It's like a weird Surveil 4, but probably you don't care about that. Probably you can just toss all 4 into the graveyard unless there's specifically a card you want in your hand and then draw 2. And with that in mind, you'll have the highest chance of getting a reanimation target into the graveyard. Very, very happy. At worst, it's just instant speed divination. No problem there. Finally, the last 2 things. I said this earlier, but I just want to reiterate. Stroke of Midnight is definitely the card we should be playing instead of Mortify. Just a stronger card. If you're playing in a format where you want to hit lands, obviously Generous Gift is the better one, but at this power level, I don't think we want to do that. I think we are fine with just the Stroke of Midnight, but you know your meta better than I do, so you might have to play Generous Gift, but this is better than Mortify by far. And finally, as always, we're in red. We should be playing Lightning Bolt. Hundreds, I don't know why I said it like that. Lightning Bolt. You should play Bolt. Bolt is so good. I'll give you my spiel. It hits commanders, it hits utility creatures, it hits players to their face. It's just very, very good. Always great to have around. Do not underestimate this card. It's very, very strong. And this is the exact kind of deck that wants to play it because it lets you take out a blocker. Like if you have 3 mana open, it lets you take out a blocker, attack with Alesha, reanimate something, and have both of them live. Or, as you might know, you attack with Alesha, you first strike something that will kill her, and then you bolt it. So that anything 6 toughness or less, even though, so anything between 4 and 5 toughness, 4 and 6 toughness can't kill her anyway. Because you'll do the first strike, you'll bolt it out, and Alesha is fine. So, something very much so worth considering. And I think that's, Ashnod's Altar. I thought that was it. Yeah, I think I talked about it. Ashnod's Altar is just very, very good. Obviously needs to be put in the deck. And though I didn't show it before, I said Carrion Feeder should also just be in the deck. These are instant speed sack outlets. We really want them in our Reanimator decks, especially with cards like Grey Merchant, where we want to just keep sacrificing that creature and reanimating it over and over again. To the point that I actually might suggest considering some blink cards like Ephemerate, because you might just get even more value out of a few of your cards. It's a great protection spell for your commander. It's a great remove a creature from combat ability. So for example, you could attack with, I don't know, let's say the Chittering Witch. You've made the 3 tokens, you're attacking with the Chittering Witch. The Chittering Witch is going to die. And so you blink her out of combat, she comes back in play, makes 3 more 1/1s, and you get to keep her, is pretty good. Then when it comes back to your turn, you get to do it again, getting 3 more 1/1s. Or obviously you just use it on Gonti, get another trigger, so on and so forth. So something like Ephemerate could be good here. But that's where I'm going to end this video. This is a great deck. I really like how you put it together. I hope these suggestions helped out. I'm really, really happy with this deck archetype, and like I said, I want to put it back together. So this is nice and inspiring. I love Alesha. She's a great character. So overall, really, really like it. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you and good luck in brewing and building.